In part 2 of Chainsaw Man, the apocalypse is coming. French prophet Nostradamus had predicted that in July of 1999, a great king of terror will descend upon humanity, and many believe this prophecy to be foretelling the end of the world. To test this prediction, the public safety sector used 30 prisoners to form contracts with the future devil to take a glimpse into the future. And while the details of what they saw are unclear, most of the prisoners will die in July, giving validity to the prophecy. The famine devil, Fami, confirmed Nostradamus' forecast to be accurate and added that the end of humanity will be followed by the Age of Devils. Nayuta, the newest iteration of the Control Devil, corroborated with Fami and stated that this great king of terror is actually the Death Devil. And because she, Fami, along with the War and Death Devils are all part of the sisterhood of the Four Horsemen Devils, they can sense the inevitable arrival of death. In the face of the end of the world, Fami has a plan. Fami has zero faith in anyone to be able to stand up to the Death Devil, not herself nor Chainsaw Man. The only exception is Yoru, the War Devil, with the condition of her being able to wield Pochita as a weapon. This is fundamentally the opposite of what Makima wanted to do. Makima wanted to use Pochita to consume and erase every other devil whose existence is a detriment to humanity. Had she had her way, Makima would have had Pochita systematically eliminate any devil that is harmful to humanity, like famine and war, until the Death Devil herself becomes weak enough to be also devoured by Pochita. On the other hand, Fami wants Yoru to use Pochita as a weapon. With full control over Pochita, Yoru can make him vomit out devils that he consumed in the past, which would let Yoru regain access to weapons that are now forgotten, like nuclear bombs. However, this may not be enough to defeat the Death Devil, because the purpose of all weapons is to kill. So while the return of certain weapons would raise people's fears of conflict and war, it would also raise people's fear of death, which would render all of Fami's effort to make Yoru stronger useless. But instead of just weapons, there are devils that Pochita can throw up that can hurt the Death Devil in different ways. Makima told Kishibe that humans used to have 4 other possibilities at the end of their lives besides death. By reviving the 4 devils that represent each of those possibilities, the Death Devil herself would be significantly weakened at no longer monopolizing the fear of the end of living. Berum also theorized that there were other forgotten uses for chainsaws aside from cutting trees, which is why Pochita is able to erase concepts tied to the devils he eats. By also restoring these functions, Pochita could grow even stronger, although as a weapon. So Makima and Fami have contrasting ideas on how to use Chainsaw Man. One to delete fears from the world, while the other to restore them. It is currently a bit ambiguous where other characters stand on which approach to take. Yoshida appears to agree with Fami's plan, but has opposed her in the past, while Berum probably wants to continue Makima's goals and erase the enemies of humanity because he idolized her. The public safety sector seemed to have gone with the erasure approach by trying to feed the aging devil to Pochita, but there was also a public safety officer that said he preferred if Chainsaw Man was turned into a weapon, so who knows. And Fumiko was content with erasing, but later changed her mind. Regardless of which approach is being taken, Denji will be stripped of his freedom. So will Fami succeed in turning Chainsaw Man into an actual chainsaw? Author Fujimoto often likes to mirror the beginning of his stories with its endings, and sometimes he hides key moments in plain sight. When the very first chapter of Chainsaw Man was published, the promotional artwork featured Denji holding a chainsaw with Makima's reflection in its blade. This illustration later materialized in the finale of part 1 as Denji ambushes Makima with the chainsaw. Meanwhile, the promo image for the opening chapter of part 2 is Asa holding a chainsaw that looks suspiciously like Pochita, with Bucky dancing behind her. It's not entirely clear what role Bucky will play in the climax of Part 2, if any at all. But if the rest of the image accurately depicts what is to come, then at some point Asa and Yoru will turn Pochita into a chainsaw. We should also take a look at Nostradamus' prophecy, because Nostradamus was a real person and he did publish a collection of predictions in the form of 4-line poetry. The prophecy of the Death Devil is one of many. In the story, we were only told the first 2 lines. The complete prophecy goes as follows. The year 1999, 7th month. From the sky will come a great king of terror, to bring back to life the great king of the Mongols before and after Mars to reign by good luck. Going by the entire verse, there will be other figures involved in the apocalypse. Aside from the great king of terror, we will also have a great king of the Mongols and Mars. The descent of the great king of terror, or the Death Devil, will lead to the resurrection of the great king of the Mongols, which will in turn lead to Mars reigning supreme. Mars is obviously referring to Yoru, because Mars is the Roman god of war, and it's been established that the king of terror is death. But who would be this great king of the Mongols? In the real world, Nostradamus was most likely referring to Genghis Khan. Nostradamus was born in 1505, and even though the Mongol Empire had ceased to be by then, its cultural impact was still felt across Europe. This king of the Mongols could be referring to Pochita, an old terror returning to haunt the world. It could also be Yoru again, the personification of war titled after one of history's greatest warmongers. Although the prophecy describes multiple figures, it's possible that a single character can represent more than one of these said figures. Maybe even the Great King of Terror is referring to Yoru. Yoru has already committed mass destruction, and it doesn't look like she's going to stop anytime soon. Perhaps the true cause of the apocalypse is Yoru herself, and the Death Devil is only stopping by afterwards. The real Nostradamus might have thought that Genghis Khan would be literally resurrected, but historians generally believe that he was more likely to be predicting that there will be another conqueror or empire originating from the east. The story thus far mostly take place in Japan, which is in the east, and the apocalypse is said to usher in an age of devils, suggesting a regime of devils occupying the earth. So this great king of the Mongols could even be an event rather than an individual. Regardless of who or what each of these figures turn out to be, the passage ends with Mars reigning, suggesting that no matter what, this conflict will end with Yoru as the winner. So will Fami get everything she wants? Will she stop death and save humanity? From a narrative perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense for her to get away with everything that she's done to Denji. There has to be some form of consequence, even if that means the eradication of mankind. And remember that the future devil doesn't want the best for humanity. He thrives on seeing people suffer. Those that make use of his powers always end up paying for it, if not with their lives, then with entertainment. And there's nothing that entertains the future devil more than a self-fulfilling prophecy. The future devil actively manipulates those he is contracted to. He selectively shows them certain visions to influence them to take actions that will lead to his desired outcomes. He didn't show those prisoners the future so that the public safety sector can avoid the apocalypse. He did it so that they will dive headfirst towards it. In fact, he probably showed Nostradamus those visions himself centuries ago in preparation for this day. At the end of the world, the future devil will dance in celebration. And what about our other protagonist, Asa? Asa is opposed to killing people. Will she stand by as Yoru continues to use her body as an instrument for slaughter? Asa has a recurring dream of running through an alley littered with dead chickens, unable to stop herself from stomping on them. Now this dream is becoming a reality. Only instead of chickens, she is stomping out human lives. But she isn't that helpless. As part 2 progressed, Asa became more accustomed to her powers. even taking back control of her body from Yoru at times. When it's time to decide the fate of humanity, Asa will most likely try to stop Yoru. But throughout the most important moments of her life, Asa has consistently faltered. So will she fumble again, or will she finally break the cycle? Most stories would probably end with the protagonist tragically killing their romantic interest to save the world and to put a stop to the chaos. But this isn't most stories, and Denji isn't most protagonists. Kishibe once asked Denji whether he is on the side of humanity or on the side of devils, to which Denji answered that he will be on the side that treats him the best. And so far, humanity has been horrible to Denji. His childhood diet consisted of eating out of dumpsters and knuckle sandwiches from his drunken father. After his father's death, he was a slave to the Yakuza and then the public safety sector. Even when he finally becomes a figure worthy of respect, other people find ways to take his happiness from him. In part 2, Denji loses his loved ones again, this time in the name of saving humanity. I feel this would make him less inclined to put humanity above himself. And his supporters either turned against him or were turned into mindless chainsaw zombies by Fami. The amount of people that still appreciates Denji at this point is almost non-existent. Besides, Denji's closest friends were mostly devils anyways, so having devils overrun the earth might not be the worst outcome for him. And he promised power to find and befriend the next incarnation of the Blood Devil, which would be a lot easier if he didn't have to find a portal to hell for it. Denji once said that anyone that gets in the way of his dreams can go die, and right now all of humanity seems to be his enemy. The origin of the word apocalypse is derived from the Greek word apokalypsis, which means a revelation. For much of part 2, we saw Denji struggle with what he really wants, a conflict between safety and normality against recognition and respect. When the end of the world comes, we may be uncovered to his true desires. Denji will have to choose whether he will be the savior of humanity or embrace death and let it happen.